Thomas Whitmore pressed his forehead against the cool, tinted window of his limousine, watching the elementary school playground through a blur of exhaustion and unshed tears. 3 p.m. dismissal. Children poured from the brick building like confetti, laughing, shouting, running into waiting arms. Parents crouched down for hugs. Grandparents held small hands. Nannies checked backpacks and wiped sticky faces. Everyone had someone. Everyone except the small girl sitting alone on the bench near the fence. Thomas had been parked here for 20 minutes, phone clutched in his hand, unable to make himself call his assistant back, unable to return to the office, unable to do anything except sit in this expensive car and wonder when his life had become so hollow that watching strangers' joy felt like drowning. 41 years old. CEO of Whitmore Industries, divorced 3 years. No children. His ex-wife had made sure of that, terminating the pregnancy he desperately wanted without telling him until after. The betrayal had shattered something fundamental in him, leaving jagged edges he'd never quite managed to smooth over. His driver, Paul, knew better than to ask why they were parked outside an elementary school in suburban Connecticut, instead of heading back to Manhattan. Thomas paid him enough to be discreet about his employer's increasingly strange behavior. The late-night drives to nowhere, the hours spent staring at parks and playgrounds, the desperate hunger in his eyes when he saw fathers with their children. Thomas wanted to be a father more than he'd ever wanted anything, including the fortune he'd built. But after the divorce, after the pregnancy his ex had hidden and ended, he'd convinced himself that door had closed forever. He was too old, too damaged, too consumed by work to deserve that kind of happiness. The little girl on the bench kicked her feet, her rainbow backpack looking enormous on her tiny frame. She had dark curls and brown skin and couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. She kept looking toward the school doors like she was waiting for someone who wasn't coming. Thomas checked his watch. 3:25. The playground was nearly empty now. Where were this child's parents? As if answering his question, a harried-looking teacher emerged from the building, walking quickly toward the bench. Thomas could see her speaking to the girl, see the child's shoulders slump further. The teacher made a phone call, waited, spoke urgently into her phone. Then she sat beside the girl, putting an arm around small shoulders. Something twisted in Thomas's chest. That child was alone, forgotten, waiting for someone who should have been there. He knew exactly how that felt. "Sir?" Paul's voice came through the intercom. "Are you all right?" "Fine," Thomas lied. "Just give me a minute." But he couldn't look away from the bench, couldn't stop imagining what that little girl was feeling. The teacher was still on her phone, still looking concerned. The girl's head was down now, her hands gripping the edge of the bench. Thomas didn't know what made him do it. Later, he'd blame temporary insanity or divine intervention or simple human decency, but he found himself opening the car door and stepping out. "Sir?" Paul called, alarmed. Thomas never got out of the car in random locations, never approached strangers, never deviated from his carefully controlled routine. But Thomas was already walking across the playground, his leather shoes crunching on gravel, his expensive suit feeling ridiculous in this environment of chalk drawings and scattered toys. The teacher looked up as he approached, immediately protective. "Can I help you?" "I'm sorry to intrude," Thomas said, using his most non-threatening voice, the one he reserved for nervous investors. "I was parked nearby and I noticed." "Is everything okay?" "We're fine," the teacher said firmly, her arm tightening around the girl. "We're waiting for someone." The little girl looked up then, and Thomas felt his heart stop. She had the biggest brown eyes he'd ever seen, swimming with unshed tears. Her lower lip trembled. There was a scrape on her knee and a grass stain on her uniform jumper. "Hi," Thomas said softly, crouching down to her eye level despite his expensive suit and the dusty ground. "What's your name?" "Lily," the girl whispered. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Thomas." "Lily's mother is running late," the teacher interjected quickly. "Her emergency contact isn't answering, but we've reached her mother and she's on her way." Something in the teacher's voice suggested this had happened before. Multiple times. Thomas looked at Lily and saw himself at 7 years old, sitting in an empty classroom, waiting for parents who were too busy with their own lives to remember they had a child. "I'm sure your mom will be here soon," Thomas said to Lily. even though the words tasted like the lies adults had told him at that age. Lily's eyes filled with tears. She's always late. She forgets about me. The raw honesty of it punched Thomas in the gut. Children shouldn't sound that resigned to abandonment. "I'm sorry," he said, because what else could he say? "That must be really hard." Lily nodded, tears spilling over. Then she did something that changed Thomas's life forever. She slid off the bench, walked right up to him where he was still crouching, and wrapped her small arms around his neck. Thomas froze. The teacher tensed, ready to intervene. But Lily just held on, her face pressed against his shoulder, crying silently. Without thinking, Thomas's arms came up to hold her. Gently, carefully, like she was made of glass. He felt her small body shaking with suppressed sobs, and something inside him broke wide open. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're okay. I've got you." Lily pulled back slightly, her tear-streaked face inches from his. And then she said the words that would echo in Thomas's mind for the rest of his life. "You look sad too, like you're waiting for someone who doesn't come." Thomas couldn't breathe. This child, this 7-year-old girl he'd met 30 seconds ago, had seen straight through him with the clarity that only children possess. "Yeah," he admitted, his voice rough. "I guess I am." Lily studied him seriously. "My teacher says everyone needs somebody. She says it's okay to feel lonely, but we have to find our people." She paused, then added with devastating simplicity, "You need a wife, and I need a dad. Maybe we could help each other find our people." The teacher gasped softly. Thomas felt tears burning behind his eyes. "Lily, honey," the teacher said gently, "you can't just—" "Why not?" Lily asked, turning to look at her. "He's nice. He stopped to check on me, and he looks like he gives good hugs. Daddy is supposed to give good hugs." Thomas couldn't speak, couldn't move. This child had somehow articulated the aching void in his chest with a few simple words. A car screeched into the parking lot. A woman jumped out, mid-30s, business suit disheveled, phone in one hand, keys in the other. She looked frazzled and guilty and exhausted. "Lily, baby, I'm so sorry. The meeting ran late and my phone died and—" She stopped short, seeing her daughter in the arms of a strange man in an expensive suit. "What's going on?" The teacher stood quickly. "Miss Johnson, Lily was waiting and this gentleman stopped to—" "I was just leaving," Thomas said, gently releasing Lily, even though everything in him wanted to hold on. He stood up, wiping dust from his suit. "I was concerned when I saw her sitting alone." Ms. Johnson's expression shifted through emotions too fast to name. Suspicion, gratitude, shame, defensiveness. "Thank you, but she's fine. I had an emergency at work." "She's been waiting for 45 minutes, the teacher said quietly. Ms. Johnson flinched. "I said I'm sorry. It won't happen again." But they both knew it would. Thomas could see it in the teacher's resigned expression, in the way Lily's shoulders slumped as she walked toward her mother. "Wait," Thomas heard himself say. Everyone turned to look at him. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to overstep," Thomas continued, his heart pounding. "But I run a company. A large company with resources. If childcare or after-school programs or transportation is an issue, I might be able to help. We have corporate programs that—" "We don't need charity," Ms. Johnson snapped, hurt pride sharpening her words. "It's not charity," Thomas said. "It's what communities do. They help each other." Ms. Johnson stared at him and he watched her crack. Just slightly, just enough. "I work 2 jobs, she admitted quietly. "Lily's father left when she was 2. I'm doing everything I can, but sometimes the timing doesn't work and I hate myself for it, but what else can I—" Her voice broke. Thomas pulled out his business card. "My company has emergency childcare services for employees, backup care when regular arrangements fall through, after-school tutoring, summer programs." He held out the card. "You shouldn't have to choose between keeping your job and being there for your daughter. Nobody should." Ms. Johnson took the card with shaking hands. "I don't understand. Why would you help us? You don't even know us." Thomas looked at Lily, who was watching him with those impossibly wise eyes. "Because someone should have helped me when I was 7 and sitting alone. And because your daughter reminded me that lonely people need to find each other, that we're supposed to take care of each other." Lily smiled then, the first genuine smile he'd seen on her face. She ran back to him and hugged him again, quick and fierce. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered against his coat. "Most people don't see the lonely kids." Thomas crouched down again, meeting her eyes. "I see you, Lily, and you deserve someone who's always there. I'm going to make sure your mom gets help so she can—" Thomas caught Lily as she launched herself at him, spinning her around. "How was school, kiddo?" "I got an A on my spelling test. And guess what? Mommy was waiting for me right at 3 o'clock today. Just like always now." "That's because Mommy doesn't have to choose anymore," Rebecca said, reaching them. She looked at Thomas with tears in her eyes. "Because someone decided to help." "You helped me first," Thomas said. "Lily helped me remember what matters." Lily tugged his sleeve. "Did you find your people yet?" "You're someone?" Thomas looked at this little girl bee. 3 months later, Thomas stood in the same playground, but everything was different. Ms. Johnson, Rebecca, worked in his company's community outreach program now, using her experience as a struggling single mother to design better support systems. Lily attended the company-sponsored after-school program where she was thriving. And Thomas? He'd launched a foundation specifically for single parents and children in underserved communities. Because Lily had been right, he did need someone. Not a wife, not yet, but a purpose, a reason to use his resources for something that mattered. "Mr. Thomas." Lily ran toward him across the playground, backpack bouncing. Rebecca followed, smiling.